I will give you a brief introduction about who I am. I didn't go to school for journalism. I am a self-taught journalist. I went to school for city planning. I have a master's degree in city planning, and I spend a lot of my time, well, my full-time job is essentially serving clients at planning and zoning boards throughout the state. I got into journalism because I've always had an interest in really just knowing what's going on around me. When I was like 5, and I always tell this story because people chuckle at it. When I was like 5 years old, every time I would hear the siren in my town in Seaside Park, I'd get on my bike and I would go, chase down fire trucks. I always wanted to really be in the know and not just learn about what's going on, but also when I was a kid, I'd run back and tell my parents. I just always wanted to keep people informed. So really, how this came about, again, I didn't go to school for journalism, but I had always had an interest in the internet. I got on the internet when I was 12 years old, prior to the introduction of the web browser. I thought it was so cool that you can connect with people, interact with people around the world. When social media, when Twitter came about in 2007, I hopped on really quickly and I started to really teach myself the, classical tools of journalism, but in a new media way, new media fashion. And essentially, I started to blog about new media, and I started to write these long-form posts about it, but then I would also apply the practice to just general news that was going around me. So I would, report on things. I would also, curate information about, world events. It was just fun to do that. So in 2011, when Hurricane Irene was bearing down, I felt like I was ready to create this kind of two-way news outlet, and I knew that there would be a ton of responsibility because not only do you have to be timely, you need to be accurate. So Jersey Shore Hurricane News it came about in August 2011. Within 4 days, it went to about 25,000 likes on Facebook. And during that storm, I was providing real-time information. Between then and Sandy, I turned it into, I moved away from the hurricane stuff. The name stuck because it just gets locked by Facebook. That's really why. Turned it into this real-time news traffic and weather platform. And then during Sandy, it obviously exploded in likes. I call them, contributors. They're people I call the people who like the page, members. They're just everyone here to be a member of the news organization. It's bottom up. So really, we're here to talk about crowdsourcing. Do you know what crowdsourcing is? I mean, does anyone have an idea what it means? Anyone? Bueller?
Taking your news from the crowd and compiling it into what you think the accurate picture of the story is.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially the way that I do it is essentially I like to say you filter through the noise. You cut through the noise and you find the information that really applies to what you're trying to accomplish. So I'll give you a quick example, the Boardwalk fire. Now the Boardwalk in Seaside, now I was there on the scene. I was home working and I got in my car and I went up there right when Coors, the building where it started, actually it started in the adjacent building, but I got there when the fire had just really started. So I started to report on that. And what I was doing, I was essentially not only reporting on Facebook and Twitter, but other news organizations throughout the world were using my information. So they were essentially, I was providing that information out to the world, and then they would see there are not many people there covering it, so we're going to use his stuff. So essentially, they curated that information from the internet and used it for their purposes. But really, crowdsourcing was so powerful during Sandy, okay? Because, and I'll show you what I do. Just to give you a feel. So this is the page. This is a platform that's built on top of Facebook. It's built on top of Twitter. I don't have a standalone website, but I am in the process of building an app and a standalone website. It's a one-man operation. I don't have really time to go outside. And you ask, how do you monetize it? Well, I haven't monetized it yet, but I have built up a content sharing agreement with WHYY in Philadelphia, so I am making money from this in an indirect way. So during Sandy now, this is just a really brief example of really how it works. This was just a car accident yesterday on the Parkway. Somebody had sent a tip that there was a car accident. This was happening in real time. I need to confirm everything that comes in front of me. I can't just throw something up there that's unconfirmed, because not only will that ruin my reputation, but it's irresponsible. You can't be reporting, especially when you have 200,000 people seeing this, information that hasn't been confirmed. So essentially I got this tip, and I started to look if I can see if there's anything on 511nj.org, which is a great real-time traffic service run by the state. It was, and then I contacted a source, and I asked if there were any injuries, and they said there was possibly minor injuries, but nothing serious. I looked around, I found some more information, and no serious injuries. So this was all going on in real time, and why this is important is because this essentially tells you to avoid Garden State Parkway northbound near Brick, and people find this really useful. It gets shared, and it goes throughout people's news feeds, and they find it valuable. Just very briefly, during Sandy, essentially what was going on was I had left my house. I had evacuated, well, for safety reasons, but I also needed power to run this. Went to my parents' house. They live inland. They have a generator. And I was reporting Sandy from all angles in real time. As everything was going on, the information I was reporting on. Obviously, everything was confirmed. And so I was reporting a story, not even being in that area. So you know the classic thing, you see the reporters on the beach, the wind's blowing, they're wearing goggles, and everything's going crazy, and they're on the scene. Well, because I have 200,000 people, they were providing information, and my job through crowdsourcing was to cull through that, find what was most valuable in real time, and confirm it, and make sure it's accurate, and publish it. So that's really the power of social media. Now, the only reason why this functions so well is because this is based on social media. I knew I had to go to where the people are. If I had a standalone traditional website, I would not have been able to obviously do any of this stuff. So really, I'll just tell you, real quick, some really shining examples on how crowdsourcing is so important. Crowdsourcing is not just important for news, but it's important to get information to people really in real time. It's as simple as you can crowdsource something during a storm. Where can we find water, gas, generators, supplies? People are responsive. I think people realize there's this social contract out there. If you help me, I'll help you, and vice versa. And people would say, I'm at Wawa on Route 37 in Toms River, and they just got a shipment of gas. Or they just got ice, or whatever. And people were saying, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm connected to everyone. And this is me, essentially, throwing it out to the world and asking people to respond. And during Sandy as well, and I really won't get into the details, but this account is linked on Twitter as well. So whenever I would post something Sandy related, I would hashtag NJ Sandy. Now, hashtag anyone? Anyone know what that means? What is it?
It's a way that you can keep up on a story or a campaign that you feel is important, because when you hashtag something, it creates a link, and you can search for other information based on that link.
Exactly. So if you see a hashtag during a storm, NJ Sandy, right? You know that if you click on that hashtag, that will essentially give you a real-time stream of tweets that were hashtagged with NJ Sandy. So then you'll be able to look through that and find it. If maybe you're looking for something general, nothing about a town, or you just want to figure out really what's going on and get a feel for it. You look through that stream, and this can be applied to anything. It's at conferences too. A lot of conferences, they say use this hashtag, and you can maybe not even be at the conference, but you can follow along, right? So during Sandy, what was so powerful was I was working with Debbie Gallant, and she knew that I was going to be doing this nonstop, and she was like, Justin, you're creating so much great content in real time. I said, well, it's not really me. I'm not the person dealing with the storm. I'm inland.
it's the contributors. And this is why it's two-way. Like I say, it's a two-way platform because it's really empowering people to use the power of social media to report what's going around, and it's top down because it's my role, it's my responsibility to ensure that information is timely and accurate. And one quick thing, then I'll turn it over. Again, it's not just news. You can apply this to anything. You can use this to, if you have the numbers, to help rescue people. Like during Sandy, the ocean was coming in, people needed to be rescued. They were calling 911, they couldn't get through. They would come here and they would say, help me. And I'm like, I can't help you. But what I can do is I can create a reporting thread where you can put your name, address, how many people they have, any medical conditions, etc. And the authorities are monitoring. New Jersey OEM had been monitoring, and they would say, Mr. Smith would write, I'm in Northern Beach, I have 3 people, and the water's rising quickly, we think we're gonna die, you think we're gonna drown, help us. OEM would see that, and they would respond, we just radioed for help, help's coming your way. So, again, this is essentially crowdsourced. This is asking people, if you need help, respond, and by people providing that information, they, in some instances, were rescued. One lady was, because of that, was rescued. A part of her roof had collapsed, and there were no injuries, but they were essentially trapped. And by using social media again through crowdsourcing, they were able to get help. This is kind of unique. 200,000 people. That doesn't happen overnight, but really you can build a platform like this in your own community very easily. It's free. It just takes a lot of dedication and a lot of time. And I would encourage everyone to really consider leveraging the power of these of social media because that's where everyone is. Any questions before I turn it over? Anyone use this? JSHN?
You know, it was great when you had like volunteer sites, like these people need help in this area, so like I would just go, oh cool, that's by me, and I would go, so I didn't even interact, just read it and went.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, most people are not interacting. A lot of times people, it's a resource. It's essentially, like every day I'll post, where can we volunteer today?
Yeah.
And that grew out of Sandy. And people would write, or would say here, or people would say, I need something. I need diapers. It can be totally unrelated to Sandy. They just have a need. And people would say, where do you live? I can help you. Or oh, that the shelter in Brick just got a supply of baby formula or diapers, whatever. And because of this, simply asking a question. The only work I'm doing is essentially asking that question. I'm not doing the research, the people do the research. The people inform each other. That's why social media obviously has become so powerful because it says, democratize. It says put the power in our hands. The power is no longer, legacy media, traditional media still has a lot of power obviously, but we are working together as people, we're able to keep each other informed. And I think that's why I do it. I love it because all I want to do is really help people be informed. It's as simple as that.
So my name is Adam Glenn, and I'll put the slide back. Your printed information has contact for both of us, so happy to hear from you guys. So I'll tell you, first of all, what Justin has done is really remarkable. To have that number of followers, of likes, is tremendous and says a lot about the value of what he's done on Facebook, and the power of that network of 200,000 people is remarkable. So what I've done, I'll show you, is in a sort of a similar fashion to use platforms other than Facebook to try and create this kind of network of shared news and dialogue around the topic of sort of post-Sandy rebuilding. So my project, I teach at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism, and the project I've launched there is called Adapt NY, and it's focused on climate resilience in New York City. So I mean, post-Sandy, how do we make the city ready for the next such big storm? And so let me just ask very quickly before I get into the talk. And first of all, please interrupt at any time with questions, okay? And we'll try to leave some time at the end for further discussion. But so how many folks have used a Facebook-like page or other tools like Justin to share news about what their news and information about what they're doing? So Facebook, maybe like maybe a quarter of the people, 4 or 5 people. How many have used Twitter to share information about their work? 3 out of the 17, 4 out of the 17. Let me throw out some other tools. How about WordPress, the blogging platform? 2, the numbers start to go down. 3. How about some more obscure tools like Feedly or an RSS feed reader? Okay, maybe one person. How about a social bookmarking tool like Delicious or Digo? How about, I have a list here, let's see. How about tools like Rebel Mouse, Document Cloud? Okay. All right, so before you say to yourself, well, am I in the wrong room? Like, at the end of the next 15 minutes, you will know what each of those tools can do for you. They're free, they're easy to use, and together you can build a suite of these things to make a one-man operation, which I'll show you is what I do, and like what Justin has done, work, a one-person operation, I should say, work for you, okay, using free tools out on the web. So you're in the right place. Let me just show you really quickly what the site looks like. Let's see, I've got a lot open now. Okay, so this is Adapt NY. The aim of this, by the way, was to really focus on getting the community's voice into the discussion about climate adaptation. So it wasn't just a top-down effort, even though it's Bloomberg has been very proactive in this area. We wanted to make sure there was a community voice. So that's the aim. There are 2 things that I do focused on in the site. One is curation, and the other is documentation. So I'll explain what each of those are. Curation, is that a familiar sounding term to anybody in the room? Like museum goers? Okay. It's kind of like that. It's like curating a museum. Basically what I'm doing is I'm looking each day to see who's saying what and who's reporting what about building climate resilience in New York and the New York region. And then I'm filtering that. I'm acting as kind of a human filter and saying what's valuable, what's interesting, what's useful, and resharing that, okay? And I'll show you how I do that in a moment, but let me also mention documentation. So I want that curation to be really informed by hard data and numbers and reports that are carefully put together. And so documentation means I look for primary source documentation. Anybody in here went to journalism school? Like, this is drilled into your head. Primary source documentation, black and white. I want black and white on that, not just what someone says. So it could be a government report, it could be university research, anything like that. So I include documentation to make for a more informed online community. The end goal, however, is conversation. Okay, if I have curation and documentation and no one's talking about it and sharing it beyond me, then it's a complete waste of time. So the point is, I shouldn't say complete waste because it's my time, and I would feel bad. But the point is to get everybody communicating about it and sharing their own information and having that leveraging effect as a media site. So let me show you how I do that, okay? Because it's very simple, really. And you can do this, and many of you probably use tools like these. Let me just close a couple of these browsers so that we're not. Here, I'll leave that open. Okay. So one tool which you've all used is Google. Okay. So I say, well, how do I curate content if I can't find it? I've got to find it. So where do you search? You go to Google and you put in a term. Climate adaptation, New York City, Bloomberg, right? And I find content, and I'm using Google News in this case. So I'm not just searching the web generally, but I'm searching for news for the latest information. And I get a result, and maybe it's a really good result, meaning there are lots of articles that come up. I can then save myself a step the next time I do this by saving that search. And that's essentially what I've done. So I use Google News, and I have a bunch of saved searches. You can see them all on the left-hand side. And I do a lot of this kind of thing, but I have several that deal with climate. So I'm going to look here. And so in this case, my search was New York and Sandy, okay? And then what I'm looking at here, I'll make it a little bit bigger if I can. Basically what I'm looking at here are article after article with the date, the headline and the date. So I could quickly determine, I'm looking for something, it's November 2nd, so I'm looking for something, if I was doing this morning, that was either November 1st or 2nd. Most of these are from the end of the earlier part of the week because of the Sandy anniversary. Everybody's gotten tired out, so there's nothing new here, but okay, that's fine. Let me go back and look in one of my other categories. I'll have to shrink it a little bit. And eventually, as I look through, I'll find content that I want to use. Some of it, here's one thing that you'll note too, is some of it is dated, and then there's this little thing that says real-time coverage. There doesn't happen to be anything there. But you can search endlessly, right? I mean, there's always stuff, and you just have to decide at some point, I've got the big ones. Let me just show you, once I find something, what I do with it, okay? So here's an article from Huffington Post on a path to a more resilient New York. Click on it, I read it through. Depending on my time, I might scan it, I might read it more carefully. And then I say, wow, that seems pretty good. So I'm just going to share it. And almost every site now has this kind of social sharing mechanism, share on Facebook, tweet, email, etc. And what you'll see, just to show you how easy this process becomes, it actually gives me content. It puts in suggested content as well as the URL. And then in this case, via HuffPost Impact, this particular part of the HuffPost site. So I can use that text. If I've read it, I might think, well, there's something more interesting. I could tweak it in various ways and change it, but I hit the button and I'm done. So I could do that for 30 articles in literally, 5-6 minutes if I'm not reading them. If I read them, which I usually do, maybe it's 20 minutes, and so it's that simple. But it doesn't end there, so that's my Google search, right? And I can save searches and add more searches. But I also find sites that I know have content for me every time I go there, and I want to go there quickly and easily to find them. But I don't want to have to remember, okay, which 17 New Jersey newspapers do I read every day? I want to make it more efficient. How many folks are familiar with feeds, or what is sometimes called RSS feeds? Okay, so one person. So basically, what is a feed? I'll show you. This is where is the newspaper we were looking at before? Actually, I could do it. I think I could do it from here. Huffington Post. No, here it is. Okay. So here's a New Jersey newspaper, the Bergen Record. Someone suggested this in the last session, northjersey.com. I'm trying to make it a little smaller so you can see. This is probably familiar to you if you don't know what it is. It's a little orange box with a dot and it looks like a radar. That's a feed. What does that mean? It means that if I click on that, North Jersey News essentially has a headline service where they syndicate or send out headlines to anybody that wants to keep track of what they do without going to their site. And in this case, I'll say, okay, yeah, I really am interested in the Road Warrior, this columnist here. I'll click on this, and then I get this gobbledygook. I say, well, I don't know what the heck that is. I don't need to know. All I need is this URL, okay, which is the URL of their feed. And then I have what's called a feed reader. Feedly is the one I mentioned. There are others, but Feedly is the one I would say, take a look at. And basically what Feedly does is it allows me to collect all those headline syndication services. So instead of having to remember my 17 newspapers, I just go to Feedly and they're all there. I'll go to the left and you'll see this is Adapt NY, and there are all the sources that I happen to look at each day, and I just decided I wanted to add one more. I simply go to the add content, I put in that URL I just looked at, and there it is. There's his column. I can look at it. And why is this useful? Because it saves enormous amounts of time. And if you want to keep track of the conversation, now all I need to do is I just need to go to my Feedly site and I could one after the other look at these, or just look at the whole thing and see what's most recent in that topic area. In this case, Adapt NY, for Adapt NY. There are all the articles there. I don't have to go to any of these sites, okay? Now, once I've done this, you know, whether it's Google Search, Google News Search, or Feedly, and I'm tweeting all this stuff out, where does it go? Well, I have my website, but I also do have a Twitter page, sort of, you know, like some of you might. How many of you have a Twitter account? Okay, so half the room, okay. So just like yours, you know, this is my Adapt NY Twitter page, and it goes, all of those tweets that I find that I want to curate go to this site, okay? But I also have my website, and I don't want to ignore my audience on my website. Now, the website is created using WordPress. Very, very simple tool, also free, very easy to use, designed for bloggers. So millions of people, literally many, many millions of people use WordPress. Very simple to use, okay? So I've got WordPress, I've got Twitter. How do I bring them together as I do this curation? I use a tool called Rebel Mouse, which is a very strange sounding thing, but I recommend you take a look at Rebel Mouse. Again, it's free. What does Rebel Mouse do? Rebel Mouse says, we know a lot of people are tweeting and doing this curation process, and they also have websites. How do we bring them together? We create what's called a social front page. Social front page looks like this, very, very simple. So I'll show you, this is what it looks like. So basically, this is my site, and often I put this as my actual front page, 2 or 3 times a week if I don't have original content. What is this? This whole black area is Rebel Mouse, okay? And what Rebel Mouse is doing for me is they're collecting my tweet, and then if I have media in the tweet, like a photo, or a video, or a map, or whatever it is, they pluck that little media out of my tweet and they post that as well. So instead of having a page with just text after text after text of my tweets, it looks like, and I'll scan down, you can see, it's full of media, full of text and media, almost like little headlines with stories to go with them. So it's a very vibrant, interesting looking page, okay? So that's a really simple way. If you do nothing else, you can have a website using WordPress. You can curate using Twitter and these search tools. And then you can have, you don't have to create any other original content, or any original content, frankly. You can just curate and have that be your front page, okay? Yes, question?
So you said the pictures are picked up by Rebel Mouse from Twitter?
That's right. So on my Twitter wall, I'll show you just so you see the contrast. See, on my Twitter wall, I have links. These are just a series of links. Now Twitter, by the way, and this happens all the time, Twitter is changing how they use media. So you may see some changes in Twitter displaying stuff like the photos as well. But you can see it's all links. It's all text and links. So what Rebel Mouse does is it says, oh, okay, that link is a picture. So I'm going to grab the picture and put it in there. So it really looks like content. Okay? And it is content. Okay? Curated content. So that's the curation part. Okay? I wanted to share with you a very simple set of free tools. Easy to set up. The documentation part, I want to share that with you as well because that's very important to what I do. So one thing I do is I say, well, when the mayor of New York City, after Sandy, basically said, wow, we've got to look at this problem and understand what to do. He commissioned a group of people, a special initiative on resilience, and he said, first of all, tell us what's going to happen in the next 50 years in terms of climate impacts. And they're a bunch of scientists, they produced this voluminous report. And I said, well, I wanted to share that with my online community. I want them to be able to read the report directly, not just hear what I and others have to say about it. So I found a tool, which is also free. You could get an account, easy to use, called Document Cloud. Document Cloud. Document Cloud was developed by some folks at the New York Times in order to keep track of thousands of pages of WikiLeaks documents back when that was a big story. So internally, they could look at the documents, they could make some comments on them, editor to editor, and you had a question.
Can you take a step back for a sec?
Sure.
You want that on Rebel Mouse?
Yes.
You had your Adapting Your website up and you showed it down the bottom appearing. Did you create that in your website? You're creating it, adding the Rebel Mouse link they create for you? Because you're obviously opening
Yes.
a Rebel Mouse account.
Yeah.
And then you get to that, and then you log in with all of your other accounts and your passwords. Rebel Mouse organizes it for you.
That's right.
Do they give you, particularly as your web designer, a link that you place now into your website
Yes.
that you put on?
Yeah, so it's, and a lot of web content works like this. It's what's called embedded content or embeddable content. So I create my account on Rebel Mouse, link in all my social media, like you're suggesting, and then it gives me a code. It's very simple, you know, it's not like you have to
It's the
know.
HTML code, right?
Yeah, what's that?
It's the HTML code.
Yeah, it's an
itself you're
HTML
giving
code. You don't have to know HTML, you just copy that whole bunch of code. And there's some simple ways in WordPress you can just, in this case, for instance, I won't show you the back end, but I'll just show you that if I go back to my home page, at the moment I have some original content, which I'll tell you about in a moment. My Rebel Mouse, I've sort of reduced to the side here. But there are many days and weeks where I don't have original content to promote, and I'll make this my whole front page. And it's just a matter of moving one little widget, it's called a widget, from one place to another, so it becomes my home page.
Are you designing your website real-time or in HTML when you're particularly designing? Are you using the program you're utilizing?
Yeah.
I'm familiar with FrontPage, which
Yeah.
is no longer supported.
Right.
So I know that
This
with
is-
FrontPage you have three options. You have
Yeah.
Real Vision, you have HTML. So are you actually designing yours, sitting there in HTML and putting that link in? Or are you going in the real-time view, taking the link, popping it in, but then it automatically transfers over when people view
Well,
it?
and I'm happy actually to talk to you in the break or afterwards too,
Okay,
more about this,
sure.
but let me just correct one thing. I'm not designing the site at all. It's like saying, you know, if I go into a clothing store and pull something off the rack and put it on, I didn't design that. And that's the beauty of WordPress, is WordPress is off the rack, ready to use. And very little design, very little HTML is needed to do it. That's really the beauty of it.
Is that similar or better than Adobe News?
Well, those tools are all about creating HTML, building HTML sites to some extent by hand. I would not recommend it. I mean, it's fun to do. Some people like it. You know, some
Yeah,
people
it's
like
not
putting their
crazy.
hand through a ringer too. You know, I would go for a simple tool that is preset and pre-designed. I mean, there's a lot of customization that's possible, but it's very, very easy.
And even Google has that now.
What's that?
Like
Yeah,
prefabricated websites.
that's right. Blogger. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. I use WordPress because it has a lot of strengths that I think Blogger and some of the others don't. But yeah.
In Medley, is that the same as Rebel Mouse, same idea?
Yeah, Embedly. Yeah, Embedly allows you to bring various social content, particularly media, into a site.
So same idea as Rebel Mouse?
Same idea. Rebel Mouse, and there are others that allow you to do this kind of stuff, but I happen to use Rebel Mouse. But it's worth experimenting and looking around. There's always new tools. So let me wrap this up. Yeah,
Are you
please.
going back to the document cloud?
Yes, that's exactly where I was going. So Document Cloud is, again, a free tool that allows me to put a PDF on my site. In this case, it was a report from this climate panel, and you could sort of see, it allows me to scan. I'm actually looking at the document as it appears. I can also look at, go by page. I can look at the raw text. I can search the text. I can put in a phrase like Queens, and it will show me where in the text it is. So as a user of my site, I can really look at that document in detail. There's one further step, which is really important, and it's very, very new. So I work with Document Cloud not just to do this kind of thing, but I said to them, I want my users to be able to themselves comment on a document, right? I want to have the conversation around the document. Can we do that? So they said, yes, let's you're the test bed. So what they've done, and what I hope to roll out to a larger audience, because I think it could be useful for any kind of document in your community, zoning laws, proposed, whatever it might be, is I can now sign in. So there's a little, here's the mayor's report about resilience, and there's a little login. Then normally you would see, it recognizes me, so it doesn't show you, but normally it would say, do you want to log in with Facebook or Google or something like that? And I could choose one, right? It's called a social login. Any user can do it. And now I'm logged in the document, and I can go, let me show you the bottom of this, as a user, not as the developer of this site, but as the user, I can say, you know what, I think there's a bunch of crap in this report, and I want to let Mayor Bloomberg know, so I'm going to add a note. I click on this little button, and all of a sudden I can go down to pick any page, and I go down and I say, I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to write in here, what's this about? I'm going to put in a little text, I don't agree, okay, and I'm going to save it, okay? And now that note exists for anybody to see. And they can comment and add their comments to my comment, and so on and so forth. So it's a public and
Document Cloud is providing that.
Document Cloud has provided it to me as a test bed.
To you.
To me, yes. So I'm sort of the the guinea pig, and then the idea is to roll it out to a larger audience because you could begin to easily imagine the applicability. Any proposal, any law, any project, you could put up there and say, what do you think? Okay. I think we need to wrap up.
You don't know when that will be available to?
I'm pressing them. We launched this in I launched the site in June, this particular tool in July, and I'm trying to expand and bring people in to actually annotate the document, which is hard because it's 400 pages, so who wants to read that? That's the reason I'm pushing for it. But I hope that early next year, for like first quarter, but it's a resource issue for Document Cloud. They built it for me, now they have to build it out for everybody. Okay. I think we have 10 minutes, right? Yeah, we're till 11:15. Okay. So I'll show you one last thing, and then why don't we just open it up for discussion about any of this. The last thing I just want to show you is to encourage you that, even though we're here to talk about crowdsourcing, it's not only about crowdsourcing. I mean, I think what Justin was doing was creating news content, from the crowd. I've tried to create original content as a long-time journalist myself, and the example I'll give, because it was so inexpensive to do, is I have a partner which is Gotham Gazette. Gotham Gazette is a public watchdog site in New York, very good. And together with a bunch of former journalism students, researchers, one of their writers, and about maybe $1,500, which is the size of a small grant, from New Jersey Commons, we said to ourselves, how can we tell if the city and the community are actually talking about climate resilience successfully? How do we know that Bloomberg isn't just doing whatever the hell he wants and telling people afterwards? So we decided to talk to the community boards, which in New York City there are 59 of them. That's the smallest body of sort of agent of governance in New York. And we asked the community boards, are you talking? And a lot of them said, talking? We haven't. All we know is we get an email saying, here's the report, read it, kind of thing. So we're very pissed off, and we did a lot of reporting. It's more subtle than that, but did a lot of reporting over a couple of months and produced a series of special reports, about 10,000 words, interactive maps, etc. The city was immediately on our case. The tone of this is negative, and we're like, yeah. And then by the end of the week, this was just last week, so I'm very high on it, the city basically said, okay, we're going to reinvigorate the community board, task forces that work with the community boards. We're going to do the city planning study to make sure neighborhoods are involved. So, I just want to point out that essentially a one-person operation, putting together a little team with $1,500 can create content that can move the ball forward in terms of how, this governance happens around post-Sandy rebuilding and recovery and resilience. So in addition to the curation and the documentation. As a journalist, I think it's important to point that out. Questions, comments for either of us about how you might maybe apply some of these tools in your own operation, or challenges? We've numbed you with information.
Don't be shy, come on.
Yeah, please.
Well, I'm interested in, Justin, about how you create, you said your content is from Facebook, or is it the other way around?
No,
Because your content is from Facebook.
Yeah, it's essentially, it's operated in the confines of Facebook and Twitter, right? The content is produced by just the regular people. So that information is coming to me, not just from the people, but say that there's a major fire somewhere, right? Say in West Long Branch. And maybe it's been going on for a half hour, right? So maybe local media is already covering that. Now, since I'm not in West Long Branch, and maybe if I'm tied up and I really can't be using the phone to make phone calls, what I'll do is you say you're there and you're an eyewitness, and you're saying, I'm seeing flames, blah, blah, blah. What I will do is I will start to look at what other news organizations have produced, right? And I will essentially take information from them with attribution to them, and I would say that the Asbury Park Press is reporting this. I will build in real time a news story utilizing the information that's not just coming from you, but also from the other media outlets. And then that, of course, if I can get a piece of media, like a photo, that always helps a lot because people want to really see what's going on. So really, it's kind of taking information in from many different angles.
So you're getting email or whatever?
Sure, I get my phone number. I think I took it off. It was on there for a while, and I was getting a lot of texts in the middle of the night, like car accident on the Parkway at 3 a.m. And obviously I need to sleep.
I think Jerry.
Justin, I want to try and help you answer the question that's just been asked, and I'm one of your contributors. This is the first time we've met. A few weeks ago, this area was affected for several days by a large coastal storm. We had persistent onshore winds. And Justin, as he said, is down in Seaside. I'm in Long Branch. I'm local, and I did some images from 7 presidents of the flood that he used. Now, in one sense, he used them. Now, you're going to have to take over from me because you also have a Newsworks. Now, he's using information from National Weather Service. He's using eyewitness, my camera, my image from the beach here in Long Branch, and he's building the story from that.
So essentially, he was on the beach, taking photos. It was a great photo of a seagull standing there and foam from the ocean, and the waves were coming. There was some mild beach erosion. Some places severe. So his photo, standalone, can just be okay. That's a cool photo. And there's erosion that happens all the time. But I created value out of that, and I basically use that for my story. So that provides you with the visual, not just the report, the text, but by him sending me that photo, not only did I have evidence of really that's happening, but I could also build the story from information from the National Weather Service, from other eyewitnesses and contributors. Then I had a content sharing agreement with WHYY in Philadelphia, and then I would write a longer form story there. So everything is kind of interconnected. And that's why I love the partnership that I have with public radio and WHYY, because I can essentially take information from the people and basically build it. And JSA Jet has a huge
distribution. And then WHYY benefits because they're getting my information. So it really works in many different ways.
I think Jerry, and then there are a couple more over here on this one too.
Well, what I would like, and what you guys are talking about, was like when you have redevelopment or eminent domain, you always have the cheerleaders and the naysayers. And each one said, you're misrepresenting the truth. And this way, it's a good way to let the public quickly collect data and figure out who they should vote for the next election.
You know, crowdsourcing can be as simple as putting together an informal poll on your site. I mean, you could do it with Facebook. You could create poll questions. You could do it using Google. It's very, very simple to do, and that's a simple way to get at some of the public feeling about something. I think on that end, and did you have one, and then the person next to you?
I
2
understand
minutes.
how people found your site, and because you had such a precipitating event that would cause. But how are you getting interest in people coming to your site?
So, I mean, that's what's so impressive really about what Justin has done, because the numbers are so huge. What I find is the way to draw audience is to create value. I mean, there are 2 things you can do. One is you can create something that is so useful that whatever, you have to let people know about it, obviously. And I use social media primarily to promote these things, but unless it has value, if people come, they won't stay and they won't recommend it. So you have to create this kind of virtuous cycle of, hey, take a look at this. Someone comes, they look, wow, this is really good. Hey, to their friends, look at this, and it goes on from there. So that's one thing I think that's critical, is creating value. The other is, Justin pointed this out in an earlier presentation. Go where the conversation is. Facebook, has 1 billion+ users all over the world. So, a lot of people talking about a lot of issues, and there are a lot of platforms like that where conversation of a certain type is going on, whether it's a Yahoo group or a Facebook page, or a million other sources, Flickr, you know, if you're sharing, or Instagram if you're sharing photos. So find out where people are already sharing that kind of content, and then be there and share your content there. I think we have time for just one more question.
My question was about searching for things on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and you have yours that you cover a lot of different things, from traffic accidents to incoming storms. If I want to just get storm information from New Jersey hurricane,
Yeah.
you know, is there a way on Facebook to search for a theme or to create themes on your
Yes,
page?
there is. Facebook, I'd say about 4 months ago, they rolled out hashtags, which is similar on Twitter. You know, Twitter, if something has a hashtag, that's essentially a hyperlink to all the stories that people are tagging, so any content. Facebook has that. It's not used really.
So if I'm on your site and where would I put the hashtag?
Okay, see, that's the problem, and that's the problem that I'm trying to accomplish. If you go to my site, there's really no search mechanism, and that was a problem during Sandy, because people, you know, you may only care about one little issue. Where can I find ice?
We wanted to volunteer. I was like all over
And
the place
volunteer.
trying to figure out ways.
And it's hard. That's why I'm trying to expand off the platform to really have a more organized platform where you can really filter down and find.
So Facebook doesn't have it exactly.
I'll just share two quick things, because Facebook, it's really a real-time platform, and so they don't emphasize search, and that's where sites like Justin's get caught. Although they do have, in their search field, you can now search for multiple terms and sort of photos or people who live in such and such a place and take pictures of, you know, so you can find sources of information like that. But the last thing, sort of, and this is a plug in a way for a website like using WordPress, is that and all blog type WordPress included have this categories and tags. So every time I publish an article, I put a little tag on it, meaning it just sort of creates a little category on the fly, and then these show up. I can put them on the site. So if someone says, yeah, I'm really interested in disaster preparedness, or I'm really interested in what's happening on the island, or whatever, they click on that link, and you can see the larger ones have more content, and that's a way of easily...
That's on your website.
That's on my website, and it would be on any blogging tool, uses tags.
So people will come to your website just by looking at those also then?
Yes, that's right. They might search on disaster preparedness, and this
then
might
find your
come up.
website.
We have to wrap, but if folks want to come up afterwards,